Lila. When my boyfriend Noah's lips brushed against mine, he murmured my stepsister's name. Elena. He moaned into my mouth. The name hit me like a slap, and I instantly pulled away. You said Elena, I whispered, each syllable cutting through my heart like a blade. Noah's eyes widened in horror. He stammered, grasping at excuses, but the truth came tumbling out. A bet. A cruel, meaningless bet. He never loved me. It had always been Elena. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. We're done, I said, my voice eerily calm. Happy Valentine's Day to me. I turned on my heel and walked out, crushing the rose petals under my feet that Noah had scattered for me. As the bastard daughter, a drunken mistake, of the Alpha, I was forced to work as a cleaner while my half-sister Elena lived as the pampered princess of our pack. My mind flashed to this morning. I stepped into Elena's room to clean, and as I dusted the dresser, my eyes caught on something in the trash can. A slim, plastic stick, the faintest shadow of pink lines still visible on its surface, a pregnancy test. My pulse hammered, nausea creeping up my throat. It could have been anyone's, but Noah's voice, breathless and needy, had called her name while kissing me. Had they? I squeezed my eyes shut. It didn't matter. The test, the bet, the lies. I had given Noah my heart, and he had stomped on it like I was nothing. Distracted by my thoughts, I stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with her. Elena recoiled, her silk shawl slipping from her arms. Watch where you're going, bastard, she spat, voice dripping with an easy cruelty. I felt Ruby, my wolf, stir within me, her fury simmered just beneath the surface. Why are you so shameless, messing around with my boyfriend? I told Ruby that he'd hold on so that we can save enough money for Mom's treatment. Then we leave this cursed place behind. I heard you think Noah's your fated mate. That's pretty ridiculous, she hissed, her nails digging into my skin. I clenched my fists, my body tense. Even if he's not my fated mate, he still won't really love you. He's just into your alpha daughter status. Just when I thought she'd lunge for me, Elena paused, her head tilting to the side getting a mind link message. The link cut and Elena glared daggers at me. She flipped her golden hair over her shoulder. Father wants to see you. I stilled. What? She rolled her eyes. Are you deaf and pathetic? I said, the Alpha summoned you. She broke down every word like I was an idiot. Now go before he changes his mind. Shock coursed through me. Alpha Henry had never summoned me in 18 years. As far as he was concerned, I didn't, and shouldn't, exist. So why now? Elena was still watching me, her arms crossed. Then she shifted, her fingers grazing her stomach unconsciously. I narrowed my eyes, but before I could speak, Elena turned on her heel and stormed away, giving one last verbal stab at me over her shoulder. Hurry up, or I'll tell Father you refused. I clenched my fists, willing my heart to steady as I made my way to the Alpha's, my father's, office. The hallway leading to his door felt longer than usual, and my hands felt clammy against my cleaning apron. Taking a shaky breath, I knocked. Enter, came the deep, cold voice from within. I pushed the door open. The office was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn against the morning sun. Alpha Henry sat behind his desk, broad and imposing, the man who had given me nothing but pain without ever laying a hand on me. Elena stood beside him, but something was different. Her usual smugness had slipped. Her nails dug into her arms as she forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sit. I remained standing. Why did you call me here? Alpha Henry's expression darkened with my small refusal to sit like a good dog. You are to attend the Lycan King's selection ceremony for brides. The words hit me like a blow. What? Elena smirked, or she tried to. But the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched, told me she was furious. I almost laughed. Almost. I stared at them, my mind racing. Damon Sinclair, the ruthless Lycan King, a tyrant who had conquered more than 10 packs and slaughtered his enemies without mercy, wanted a bride? I folded my arms. Elena is right, she should be the one to be selected to attend, she's the noble daughter, not the bastard. Henry's jaw tightened. There's a reason Elena can't go to the selection, and if the Lycan King finds out, the consequences will be bad. Another important reason is that I don't want Elena to leave my side. I guess this is Elena's punishment for stealing someone else's boyfriend. Elena, angry but holding it in front of the alpha, and Henry, impatient, says, I've already made up my mind. You can't refuse. And if I refuse? Alpha Henry leaned forward, his eyes darkening. Then I will ensure that your mother's treatment stops immediately. The air in my lungs vanished. My legs wobbled, and I gripped the chair in front of me, not believing he would be so cruel. But one look at his face told me otherwise. My mother, the only person in this world who had ever loved me, was wasting away. Every bit I earned went toward her medicine. I had vowed to save her. And now, Daddy dearest was dangling her life over my head. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You want me to enter the selection as your daughter, fine. But in exchange, you'll make sure my mother receives the best medical care possible. Alpha Henry's lips curled in satisfaction. Done. But you'll make sure you aren't selected. I took a shaky breath, but before I could speak, Elena laughed. Don't worry, father. The Lycan King would never choose a lowly wolf like her. You can dress her up, but she's not me. A knock sounded at the door before it burst open. One of the pack's officers stepped in, his face pale. Alpha, the Lycan King has sent word. Henry's posture straightened instantly, respect flashing across his face. What is it? The officer hesitated, glancing at me before continuing. The King's beta has arrived early. He demands to meet with the alphas and bride candidates immediately. My stomach dropped. I thought I'd have at least some time to prepare. Alpha Henry must have had the same thought as he cursed under his breath. I forced my breathing to steady, but inside, panic clawed at my chest. This was real. This was happening. I'd never in my life agreed with Elena, but there was no way King Damien would choose me. My mother's life, and possibly mine, depended on it. Lila. I followed Alpha Henry down the long, dimly lit corridor toward the meeting room, my stomach twisting into knots. The scent of polished wood and faint cigar smoke lingered in the air, making it hard to breathe. But that could have been my nerves. Just as we reached the heavy oak doors, he turned to me, his dark eyes narrowing. Behave yourself, he hissed under his breath. Don't screw this up. I forced myself to nod, my hands clenched at my sides. There was no point in arguing. No point in saying that I had no intention of making a scene. If I so much as blinked wrong, he would twist it against me. He pushed open the doors, revealing a lavish meeting room. A large, dark mahogany table sat at its center, flanked by tall leather chairs. A male stood at the head of the room, exuding an aura of authority. This must be the beta of the Lycan King. The moment we stepped inside, Alpha Henry's entire demeanor changed. The cruel smirk he always wore around me vanished, replaced by an welcoming smile. Beta Ronin, he greeted, bowing his head slightly in a surprising display of submission. It is an honor to welcome you to our pack. The beta barely acknowledged Henry, his gaze sweeping across the room before settling on me. His posture was rigid, his face unreadable. Alpha Henry continued, I have arranged for you to stay at the finest hotel in the city. A 5-star suite, with every luxury imaginable. And, of course, I have arranged for the company of several lovely females to see to your every need. Beta Rona's expression darkened. I am here for business, not pleasure. Next time, do not waste my time with such nonsense. Alpha Henry's shoulders stiffened, but he forced a chuckle, masking his irritation. Of course, Beta. I only wished to show proper hospitality. Beta Ronin ignored him, his piercing gaze shifting back to me. This is your daughter, Elena? I noticed the flicker of shock in his eyes, fleeting but unmistakable. It made my stomach twist with unease. I wasn't sure what had startled him about me. My money was on my disheveled appearance. Yes, Alpha Henry said smoothly, reaching out to pull me closer. His hand gripped my arm in a mock display of fatherly affection. My most beloved daughter. I barely stopped myself from recoiling. The lie was so absurd it almost made me laugh. This was the same man who had called me a mistake my entire life. Now, he paraded me around like some prized possession. My skin crawled, but I forced myself to stay still and let him play this game. I just had to think about my mother. Beta Ronin stepped closer, his nose flaring slightly and scenting the air around me. My pulse quickened. Not my appearance then, it's the faint scent of cleaners clinging to my clothes. He studied me intently. All wolves with alpha blood are strong. But you are weak. Why? I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to hold his gaze. Alpha Henry stammered beside me, scrambling for an explanation, but I cut him off before he could spin another lie. I may look weak to some, but my body doesn't define my strength. I raised my hands slightly, showing the rough calluses and faint scars on my palms. I train hard. These are marks of discipline. Beta Ronan's expression remained unreadable, but he gave a small nod. Training marks are one thing. True power is another. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if assessing me further. Do you have a mate? He asked, voice calm but firm. I shook my head. No. Have you ever mated? Heat rose to my face, but I kept my expression neutral. No. Beta Ronan studied me for another long moment before finally pulling out a small notebook from his coat, flipping through its pages before stopping. Elena Ashford. He checked a box beside my name and snapped the book shut. 10 days from now, the royal emissary will come for you. Say your goodbyes. Shifting to my father, Ronan nodded. I'm leaving for the next pack. Best of luck. Alpha Henry seemed pleased with my performance, but his gaze darkened as soon as Beta Ronan left the room. Without a word, he turned on his heel and stormed out, expecting me to follow. From this moment on, you will train relentlessly, he ordered once we were alone. You will perfect your manners, your posture, your speech. You will not embarrass me. Do you understand? I swallowed hard and nodded. The next 10 days were brutal. Mornings were spent attempting to master noble etiquette, how to walk, how to sit, how to speak without revealing too much emotion, or who I really was. In the afternoons, I studied Lycan history and battle tactics. Evenings were dedicated to understanding the Lycan king himself. Damon Sinclair. The ruthless, calculating king. The alpha of alphas. I learned he was a male with a strong desire for control, so I was taught never to defy him. He valued power and discipline above all else, so I couldn't display weakness. He valued a rational, minimalist lifestyle, despising unnecessary emotional displays. I had to maintain independence and grace at all times. He was passionate about training and liked to collect things. I memorized every detail, every expectation, all while pretending to be someone I wasn't. Rumors about King Damon flew through the packs. Several maids, and their pack, had been punished for offending him. My mind reeled with thoughts of what would happen if he found out he had been lied to about a bride candidate's identity. If my true identity was exposed, my pack would also be in danger. I didn't care much about the wolves who bullied me, but I didn't want to harm my mother. I believed I wouldn't be chosen. All I needed to do was stay low, be cautious, and then quietly leave the palace. On the final night before my departure, I stood by her sickbed. She had been unconscious for days, her breath shallow, her body frail. But as if sensing my presence, her eyelids fluttered open. "Mom," I whispered, my throat tightening. She blinked up at me, her tired eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm sorry," she rasped. "I'm sorry you have to do this for me." I shook my head, biting back tears. "Don't worry about me, Mom. As long as I can get you the treatment you need, it's worth it." She squeezed my hand weakly, and I held on to that moment, burning it into my memory. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, hardly recognizing myself. The transformation was staggering. My skin glowed with health, my muscles had gained definition, my hair shone under the morning light. I had become someone else entirely. I looked like an alpha's beloved daughter. When the royal emissary arrived, I met Alpha Henry's cold stare one last time. I glanced at Elena, at the hatred burning in her eyes, and at my so-called family who had never been anything but cruel to me. I swore to myself then and there, I would take my mother away from these people. At any cost. The journey to the palace was long, and when I arrived, I was ushered into a grand hall filled with women. They were all beautiful, adorned in silk gowns and designer jewelry. The excitement in the air was palpable. "OMG, the Lycan King is coming." One woman squealed. "Quick, how does my hair look?" I watched them in disbelief. They were truly excited to be here. They actually wanted to belong to a male known for his cruelty. I lowered my head and stepped toward the back of the group, hoping to disappear among them. But a feeling of unease settled deep in my chest. I didn't think I would be chosen. All I needed to do was survive this ordeal and leave. Yet, for some reason, the words of Beta Ronin echoed in my mind. All wolves with alpha blood are strong. But you are weak. I clenched my fists. No, I wasn't weak. And if I had to prove it to survive, then so be it. Lila. I kept my head down, trying to blend into the crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. Each of these women were preening, whispering, vying for attention. They were all here for the same reason, to be chosen by the Lycan king. Not Damon, a girl beside me sighed dreamily. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. These women knew nothing about the kind of man who ruled over us. Their giggles and whispers grated against my nerves, but I held my tongue. The last thing I wanted was to attract anyone's attention. The crowd seemed to shift, parting ever so slightly as a woman approached with slow, measured steps. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each movement deliberate, exuding confidence. She was tall, stunning, with sharp features and piercing eyes that roamed over the gathered women like a queen surveying her court. Oh, that's Isabella, a girl whispered near me, her voice trembling with awe. She's the Lycan king's favorite. She's practically royalty, another girl murmured. No one crosses her and gets away with it. What's she doing here? Another asked, barely above a breath. As if on cue, Isabella stopped in front of a young girl near the edge of the crowd. The girl was shorter, delicate-looking, and wore a dress that, while clean and modest, was simpler compared to the lavish gowns around us. Isabella let out a soft, cruel laugh. Is your pack bankrupt? She asked, her tone laced with mockery. Or did you just forget that we're in the palace? That dress looks like something my maids would throw away. The girl blushed furiously, shrinking back. I. Isabella clicked her tongue. Oh, you poor thing, she said, eyes glittering with amusement. Did your alpha send you here as a joke? Or maybe he's just trying to get rid of you? She tilted her head, feigning sympathy. Because let's be honest, no one with any real value would show up looking like that. The girl trembled, gripping the fabric of her skirt so tightly her knuckles turned white. Isabella stepped closer, her voice dropping into a cruel whisper. Her head tilted as if inspecting something distasteful. And you actually think you belong here? That you have a chance? You're dirtying the palace floor just by standing here. The air grew heavy with tension. No one spoke up for the girl. They all looked away, pretending not to see the cruelty unfolding before them. I clenched my fists. I knew what it was like to be bullied and shamed, and a word came out of me without my control. Enough. My voice rang out, sharp and firm. Silence fell over the hall. Heads turned. Eyes widened in shock as they all looked at me. Even Isabella froze, her expression shifting from amusement to something unreadable. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something else flicker across her face. Recognition. Shock. You, she whispered, stepping forward. She studied me, eyes narrowing, and then, suddenly, her expression twisted. How could you? She didn't finish her sentence. Instead, her lips pressed into a tight line, and a flicker of fury darkened her features. With a flick of her wrist, she turned to a group of palace servants. Get someone to punish her, she ordered, her voice filled with venom. I want her, and that girl sent to the garden to pull weeds. And make sure she never gets a chance to meet Damon. The last words were spoken through clenched teeth, her glare burning into me as though my very existence was an insult to her. I frowned. This wasn't just about me speaking up. That moment of recognition in her eyes was too intense, too personal. There was something else beneath her anger. I didn't understand it yet, but I knew better than to ask. A few servants moved toward me, but I raised a hand. I'll go by myself. Let them think they were punishing me. If pulling weeds meant I could avoid this selection process with my identity intact, then I had no complaints. The garden was vast, with rows of neatly trimmed hedges and colorful flowers. The sun blazed overhead as I knelt in the dirt, yanking out weeds with steady, methodical movements. Sweat dripped down my neck, and my arms ached, but I kept going, welcoming the exhaustion. At least out here, away from prying eyes, I could breathe. A quiet shuffling caught my attention, and I looked up to see the girl from earlier approaching. She hesitated before crouching beside me. I'm so sorry, she murmured. For getting you into trouble. I shook my head. It's not your fault. People like Isabella will find any excuse to put others down. She nodded slowly, brushing dirt from her dress. I'm Emma. Lila. She offered a small smile. You don't talk like the other girls. I shrugged off the comment, not wanting to go down that line of questioning. Emma's smile faded, and she glanced around before lowering her voice. I heard something from the others. About why the king hasn't married Isabella. I arched a brow. Why? She hesitated, then whispered, the elders want him to find a second mate. That's why they're holding this selection. I frowned. Then why doesn't he just marry her? Emma's expression turned uneasy. No one knows for sure. But they say the first Luna died. And Isabella is the only one the king allows by his side. I scoffed, yanking another weed from the soil. So, she has all the power, but not the title? Emma nodded, biting her lip. That's what makes her dangerous. She's desperate to keep it that way. I wiped sweat from my brow, considering her words. And Damon just lets this happen? Emma hesitated. I don't think he cares. Or maybe he's just waiting for the right person. I let out a dry laugh. Well, that won't be me. Emma looked at me strangely, as if trying to figure me out. Finally she said, you don't seem scared of her. Fear gives people like Isabella power, I muttered. And she won't get that from me. I let that sink in, the pieces shifting in my mind. Isabella clearly had power, but not enough to claim the title of Luna. And that meant she was desperate to keep anyone else from getting close to the king. A chill ran down my spine. Isabella was King Damon's favorite and I had just pissed her off. The sun burned high in the sky as the hours dragged on. The servants overseeing us refused to let me rest, and I felt my wolf, Ruby, nearing her limits. My body screamed in protest, but I gritted my teeth, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me falter. Then, suddenly, a wave of dizziness crashed over me. My vision blurred. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. The scent of the earth swirled around me, too strong, too sharp. A strange sensation rippled through my chest, deep in my bones. I heard Ruby's voice, faint but certain. I smell the mate's scent. I tried to respond, but the world tilted. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. A distant ringing filled my ears, drowning out the sounds around me. Just before the darkness that claimed me I heard a voice, deep and commanding. What happened here? Damon. I stood by the palace window, staring down at the sprawling royal garden. My thoughts were far away, lost in the ever-growing exhaustion of duties I never asked for. Behind me, Jackson cleared his throat. There's a girl in the selection who resembles her. I didn't turn to face him. I didn't need to. His words settled over me like a storm cloud. Impossible. My voice was flat, emotionless. My Luna was one of a kind. No one is like her. Jackson didn't flinch. He'd been my mentor for too long to be intimidated by my coldness. Your Highness, Natalie is gone. We must move forward. The Pax have been without a Luna Queen for 10 years. This selection may help you find your second mate. I exhaled sharply, turning away from the window. You know I'm not interested in them. None of them could ever replace Natalie. None of them would be worth my time. Jackson sighed, his patience clearly thinning. You have responsibilities, Damon. You can't keep shutting out the idea of a Luna. The pack needs stability. You need stability. I scoffed, running a hand through my hair. Stability. My father ruled without a Luna for years, and he was just fine. Why should I be any different? Because your father wasn't haunted by the ghost of his mate, Jackson said bluntly. Few people could get away with speaking to me like that. Before I could respond, a flash of movement in the garden caught my attention, happily pulling from the argument I did not want to have. A figure in the garden collapsed in the dirt, her long hair spilling over her face, the sun bathing her like a tragic painting. Her body trembled slightly, fragile among the plants she was tending. Something about the image made my chest tighten, though I couldn't understand why. My wolf, Zane, stirred. Who is she? I ignored him. My wolf never cared much for others, so I wasn't sure why he showed any interest now. Zane growled softly in my mind, demanding my attention. She needs help. Send the beta. Jackson, sensing my distraction, followed my gaze through the window. A girl who couldn't withstand the heat, he noted. I wasn't sure if he meant that literally, or that she shouldn't be here for the bride selection that he insisted I hold. Not willing to have another argument with either Jackson or my wolf, I opened the mind link to Ronan. There's a woman hurt in the garden. Find out what happened and report back. A few minutes later, Ronan knocked and quickly entered the room. My king, the female was rude to Isabella, so she ordered her to pull weeds in the garden. She collapsed from exhaustion. Of course she did. A flicker of irritation sparked in my chest. Isabella had overstepped. Again. She had no authority to punish anyone, yet she acted as if the palace were hers to command. I clenched my jaw. Relieve her from the punishment and have the servants bring her inside. Zane growled louder. Send a doctor. I want to meet her when she wakes up. I stiffened. No. You know I'm busy today. Come on, it won't take long. He whined, actually whined at me. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. It wasn't like my wolf to fixate on anyone, and it was unsettling. My gaze swung back to the gardens, lingering on the place the woman had collapsed. A strange unease settled in my gut. My instincts had never betrayed me before, and something about this woman was setting them on fire. Send a doctor, I ordered my beta. And when she wakes up, I want to meet her. My wolf was pleased, but I wasn't. Not at all. Lila. I woke up to the feeling of cool cloth pressing against my forehead. My body ached, but the dizziness from the heat had faded. I blinked up at the high ceiling, disoriented. A man stood beside me, adjusting what smelled like a vial of medicine. His scent told me he was Lycan but not a dominant one. Hello. Are you a doctor? I rasped, my throat dry. He nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. You collapsed in the garden from exhaustion, you really should rest here for a while. Does every woman in the selection get a personal doctor? I asked. The doctor's lips twitched, almost amused. No. Just you. The beta ordered me to tend to you. I frowned. Beta Ronan? That was strange. I'd assumed Isabella would have left me to rot out there, not told Ronan where I was. I'd like to thank him, if I could. A firm knock made me sit up. I expected the doctor to answer it, but instead, the door opened on its own, revealing a tall man with sharp eyes and an aura of quiet authority. Beta Ronan, speak of the devil. Behind him, a maid stood, arms crossed, looking proud for reasons I couldn't figure out. I swallowed. Thank you for helping me, I appreciate it, I said cautiously. Beta nodded in acknowledgement. The king wants to see you. My heart stuttered and panic threatened to drown me. What if Isabella had twisted the story? What if this was a summons for more punishment? Damn me and my smart mouth. I glanced down at myself. My dress was wrinkled, covered in dirt, completely unfit for meeting a king. I can't go like this. The maid stepped forward, the reason for her proud expression was now clear. She held out a gorgeous gown. The delicate fabric shimmered with tiny jewels, expensive beyond anything I'd ever touched. I inhaled sharply. This must have cost a fortune. The maid scoffed. As the daughter of an alpha, you must have worn something like this before. I stiffened. My reaction had been too genuine. Too out of place. She was right. As the daughter of an alpha, I should have enjoyed the finer things like gowns that cost more than a month's pay. Ronan's gaze flicked to me, sharp as a wolf scenting blood. Strange reaction, he murmured. I forced a small laugh, trying to recover. It's just more than I expected. Beta Ronan's gaze lingered on me, pinning me in place. He noted the tension in my shoulders and the fabric of my dress clenched too tightly in my hands. More than you expected, he echoed, voice low. Calculating. What exactly were you expecting, then? The air in the room thinned. My heart slammed against my ribs. I smoothed my hands over the gown, forcing my shoulders to relax. Think. Recover. I just didn't think the selection would spare such extravagance for us. I expected to change into my own gown, I said lightly, masking the tremor in my voice. Ronan hummed, unconvinced. He stepped closer, his presence intimidating. That's so. His voice was softer now, more dangerous. You're an alpha's daughter. You should be used to extravagance. I forced myself to meet his gaze. Lesson 1, don't show weakness. Of course. But my father was practical. Ronan held my stare as I held my breath. This felt like a test. And if I didn't pass, I wouldn't make it out of this selection alive. Lila. I stood there, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of the dress on my body. My hands traced the soft fabric, the intricate patterns that danced across it. It was beautiful, but the elegance only made me feel more out of place. This dress, so fine, so rich, reminded me of my grandmother. She thought luxury was a waste of pack resources. I sighed quietly, trying to maintain some semblance of composure, as I answered Beta Ronan's silent scrutiny. This dress reminds me of my grandmother. She valued thriftiness. Beta didn't comment further, just nodded his approval before turning to walk ahead. His silence was telling. He didn't need to say anything more, his thoughts already calculated. Without a word, he motioned for me to follow. I had learned to remain quiet growing up. The less I was seen or heard, the more freedom I had. That training kicked in as I followed Ronan down the cold stone corridor. I couldn't help but shudder. The walls seemed to press in on me, their chill seeping into my bones. I imagined the room ahead, Damon's room. The Lycan King, as I should have thought of him. Terrifying. Dark. An imposing figure who commanded the kind of power that made even the strongest men tremble. The thought of meeting him sent an uneasy flutter through my chest. Every part of me screamed to run in the opposite direction, but I had no choice but to continue forward. Our footsteps echoed in the hall, and I focused on them, trying to keep my mind from drifting too far. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the whispers that tried to creep into my thoughts. I was so lost in my own anxiety when Ronan suddenly paused, his head tilted slightly as though he were receiving a mind link. His gaze flickered toward me. "I'll have to leave you for a moment," he said briefly. "The maid will escort you the rest of the way." Without waiting for a response, he turned and left, his presence fading back down the hallway. The maid, who had been quietly trailing behind, stepped forward, her eyes soft but unreadable. She nodded, motioning for me to follow. My mind was too consumed by the impending meeting with the Lycan King to pay attention to much else. As we walked, I turned a corner and almost collided with Isabella. She was as perfect as ever, her sharp features framed by her styled hair, her posture rigid with the kind of self-assurance that only a noble like her could possess. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What are you running around for in the palace?" Her voice was sharp, like the crack of a whip. I swallowed hard, not wanting to speak to her in case I snapped back again. And keeping the king waiting was probably not going to help my case in wanting to avoid further punishment, or with fading into the background. The king wanted to see me. Isabella's eyes widened in shock, but only for a brief moment. Then, her face twisted into a snarl as she stalked towards me. The maid placed herself between us, but Isabella was determined to get to me. She shoved the maid aside and stepped into my personal space. "Don't think just because you have that face that you're something special," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't deserve his attention." Her words stung more than I was willing to admit. My face. What was wrong with my face? Did she hate my sister Elena and thought I was her? Of course she did, that's why I was here. As if to answer my silent question, Isabella's lips curled into a sneer. "Don't get too comfortable, little girl. You're not fooling anyone." Before I could process what was happening, Isabella's arm flashed towards my face, clawing out to slash my smooth skin and mar the face she seemed to hate so much. My instincts flared, and I blocked her hand, stepping back. The moment she hesitated, I seized the opportunity, grabbing my skirt and running blindly through the endless halls of the palace. The vastness of it all, the towering walls and the network of corridors flew past in a dizzying maze. My heart pounded in my chest, my breaths coming in short bursts. I had no idea where I was going, but I had to get away. I had to outrun Isabella. I had to find my way to safety. Out of nowhere, my senses flared, and I smelled it. The scent that made my blood run hot and twisted my stomach into knots. It was sweet, irresistible, almost maddening. I followed it instinctively, not caring where it led me. It pulled me in like gravity, and every step was more urgent than the last. I couldn't stop myself. I had to find the source of that scent. And then I ran straight into a solid wall of muscle. My hands slammed into a chest, the force of the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. The heat of the male's body radiated through me, and I reached out to steady myself. My palms pressed against his firm chest. His muscles tensed beneath my touch, and I felt an unfamiliar spark of awareness travel through me, as though my very being recognized him. "I'm sorry," I stammered, quickly taking a step back, but my words felt hollow in my mouth. "I didn't see." "Be careful." The man's voice was low, cold, and surprisingly impatient, but I couldn't focus on the words. My mind was too busy trying to process the pull that thrummed between us. The wave of suffocation. An irresistible force. I raised my gaze slightly, and when our eyes met, the world seemed to stop. Ice blue eyes stared back at me, devoid of emotion but filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I watched with fascination as his pupils dilated as we stared at each other. Everything inside me screamed. "Mate." The word echoed in my mind, like a deafening roar. My wolf howled in response, her cries vibrating through me. I was frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The connection was undeniable. This was him. The guard beside him, massive, intimidating, grabbed my arm and jerked me toward the ground, forcing me to kneel before this male. My knees hit the cold stone floor with a sharp thud, and I gasped in pain, still trying to comprehend what was happening. "Kneel." The guard's command was harsh, but I couldn't focus on him. My mind was consumed with one thought: my mate. Isabella's shrill voice broke through my thoughts. "Your Highness. Please, allow me to deal with this, disrespectful mutt," she said, her tone exaggerated, dripping with false sweetness. She was already kneeling in front of Damon, her palms upturned, begging for his attention. But all I could do was stare at the man before me. My mate. The man who, in an instant, had unraveled everything I thought I knew about my world, and everything I was here for. Damon Sinclair, the Lycan King, was my mate. I couldn't comprehend it. My heart raced, my mind spun in circles. This tyrant, this dangerous, unfeeling alpha, was mine? Even as the thought terrified me, I couldn't shake the undeniable bond that pulled me toward him. It was a stronger force than anything I had ever felt before. Stunned, I knelt before him, the weight of the realization crashing down around me. I was in so